Hello and welcome back to the Intel with Greg Cosell. I'm Jeff Mosher alongside Adam Kaplan. We're on the Inside the Birds platform, and we've got Greg Cosell here to continue breaking down prospects available for the NFL 2025 draft. And this episode will be devoted to tight ends. And, Adam and I have had this discussion, Greg, because there are a lot of these guys that we're talking about as first rounders or top 50 guys. It gives the appearance it's a deep tight end draft, but it's more that it's a seemingly top-heavy tight end draft because the ones who are in the top look like they're going to be pretty good players and they grade out well, and NFL teams like them. I don't know how many are going to be impact after the second or third round, but the ones who do get picked pretty early, day one, day two, look to be guys who could play in this league.
Well, and I think one important point to make is over the last number of years, more teams have played at a 12 personnel, meaning one back, two tight ends. So a lot of tight ends get to play meaningful snaps. And they might not be stars. They might not be guys that you think of, oh, they're big time tight ends. But tight ends do get to play. I mean, even some of the really good teams in this league, the Chiefs have been very heavy playing 12 personnel. That's just an example. But so a lot of tight ends do play, and they come in all shapes and sizes. And like you said, Jeff, there might only be a couple in this draft. Although I think there could be a few more that we would look at as sort of tight end one, the guy that is your guy. But, there's going to be others who are going to play in the league, and depending on team, they're going to be factors, in the team's offense.
Right. So Adam and I talk about this all the time, Adam, right? There are tight ends is a little bit of for NFL teams, it's a little bit of a what flavor do you like as opposed to maybe an elite pass rusher or an elite wide receiver where you may look for different qualities. And I think, Adam, with the two top prospects, Tyler Warren and the Michigan kid, Colston Loveland, there will be teams that view them different. Like one might be a one for one team and the other might be the two for another team. That just depends on how you like to deploy your tight ends.
And what they can do, if you have a guy who can only catch, he's a really good pass catcher but can't block,
mm-hmm.
You have to decide what you're willing to accept and what you could coach or what you could develop into. Like Dallas Goedert wasn't asked to block very much at South Dakota State. He became a tremendous all-around tight end. I don't think they knew that quite yet when the Eagles drafted him in the second round, but bottom line is he turned out to be that. A guy could do everything. So, and this draft has got tiers of tight ends. The top two guys will go in the first round, which we'll talk about very quickly in a minute. And then I'll be interested to see what Greg thinks about the next group, because that's where you have to make a decision on what these guys are, Jeff, at the next level.
There you go. All right, Greg, we'll start off with the guy who maybe had the best year of all tight ends, and that's Tyler Warren, who is a tight end, a quarterback, a running back, a H-back. He played about 6 different positions in that Penn State offense.
Yeah, I mean, he led the Big Ten in receptions, with 104. And he rushed 26 times for 218 yards. He was a first-team All-American. I kind of think, even though he caught 104 balls, I kind of feel like he's just scratching the surface of his receiving traits. He's certainly got the athletic and physical tools to develop into that kind of diverse multi-location tight end, even perhaps boundary X on the backside of trips. He can be a mismatch, much in the way George Kittle is deployed with the Niners. But I think one area, and we talked about this a little bit last night with the Patreon guys, that you didn't see a lot of on tape is you didn't necessarily see him running routes where he had to separate versus man coverage. There is physicality to his route running, though. He's got great hands, and he's got an imposing ability to make tough contested catches. The contact does not bother this guy at all. He's just a physical football player, the kind of guy you feel like just loves playing ball. Which is kind of true with George Kittle too, as we know. So I'm not making a direct comparison, but I think that Warren has a lot of traits. We'll see how he does versus man coverage once he gets to the league, but there's nothing to suggest he can't do it.
Jeff, he's the kind of guy, when you draft him, you kind of know day one he's starting for you. If you're a top 10 team and you take him there, because tight ends typically don't go that high, you feel like this guy's pretty special. Like there's a reason why you take a tight end in the upper half of the first round. You think this guy's going to be your start next 8 to 10 years if healthy?
Yeah. No question.
think he would work really. I mean, I think he'll be good in any offense, but I think a Shanahan style offense that can get him open in space where he may not have to always have to beat guys one-on-one would probably really benefit him as he really gets his receiving part of the game down. And that sort of brings us to the next guy, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, Greg, who I think you'd say is a completely different style of tight end, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Now he had to block, and by the way, he gave great effort as a blocker. Because at Michigan, you know, we know about their run game, and you do have to block. So he did that. Maybe he's not the best blocking tight end in the class, but he did give really good effort, and he understood how to do it. But this guy he's a receiver. I mean, this guy has great length. He's got effortless, fluid movement. He's got play speed. He's got explosiveness. He's got flexibility. He's a 3-level dimension. He can run vertically. He's got a profile that clearly says tight end 1: size, length, quickness, flexibility, speed. You can line him up anywhere in the formation. He's including boundary X. He's that guy, you know, for sure. He can line up as your boundary X, you know, the single receiver to the short side of the field, and he can win on routes. But he's got everything you want as a receiver. That's really the strength of his game. He's not quite Brock Bowers, but he's that kind of player, you know, in terms
of McBride-ish, perhaps.
What's that?
Would Trey McBride sort of hit you as far as being?
I think he's more athletic than McBride.
Oh, that's interesting.
McBride's a good athlete, but I think this guy is a little more fluid, a little smoother, just generally in the way he moves.
Got it.
So the next guy is interesting because he had an injury, so he didn't participate after the Senior Bowl. He did not participate in the pro day at his school or the combine. But if you look at Elijah Arroyo's numbers for the first 3 years of his career at Miami, first 3 years, 11 total catches, you go, there's no way this guy's getting drafted. Now, he had 35 catches his final year at Miami for 590. He can run. But Greg, as we send it over to you, I'm not saying he's the same player. You always have to set this up and put qualifiers on it. But being at the Senior Bowl for 20 years or so, I remember seeing Jimmy Graham the first time. I'd never seen him play. Same school. And I go, holy smokes. And Jimmy Graham was a huge dude. But I just remember no one could handle Elijah Arroyo. He's so smooth, Greg, in the way he moved. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Yeah, well, it's funny. You know, I think his medical reports and lack of experience will be factors, you know, in the way teams look at him. But you just nailed it, Adam. I mean, this guy is smooth. He's fluid. He's got soft hands. He's got a wide catching radius, and he can run. I mean, this guy has an extra gear when he had a vertical runway. I mean, he can run. I think you can line him up anywhere in your formation. I think he's a guy that has a lot of experience as a motion receiver, which is a major part of the NFL now. You give him free access. You let him stride out early in the route, generate speed. This guy was a fascinating guy to me. I mean, I think because I think he's a little older, but he's been hurt. So you got to factor that in. But if he can continue to develop, I mean, there's a lot there with this guy, and particularly that vertical dimension, which every team wants.
You said he had 11 catches in 3 years, Adam? Is that what you said?
Yeah. First three his total was 11, 5, 5, and 1.
Wow. When he gets
I'm assuming he was hurt because that's crazy.
He owes half his paycheck to Cam Ward when he gets drafted.
Yeah, right. His final year. I mean, I think he's just 22. He's not like really old, but
no, that's yet.
22 is fine.
He was a 4-star recruit, stayed there the whole time, ended up having the really good year this year.
Mm-hmm.
This he's got a lot to him, and every team wants the tight end to be a factor, in the intermediate and vertical areas, and he is.
Can he? You may have said this, and I missed it. His blocking ability.
Well, it's funny. He was a featured blocker in the Miami run game. He worked primarily on the edges, but he was also deployed as a drive-based blocker. Split flow was the main thing that he did. And what that means for people who are listening is when you run zone and you have usually a tight end then go across the formation away from the zone side, and he blocks the backside defensive end or outside linebacker so that guy can't run and chase and make the play.
So the Eagles use Goddard for that quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's what he was good at, really good at.
All right. Good stuff. One of, I believe a tight end. I know that the Eagles have shown interest in, at least in having conversations with him, Senior Bowl, Combine, and he is the son of Hall of Famer Jason Taylor. He is Mason Taylor from LSU. So
Mason Taylor is an interesting guy because I just didn't feel like the way he was used at LSU. And again, no knock on their coaching. I never do that. They know their players. They do what they do. But Mason Taylor has a lot of ability. I mean, he's a guy that is also a true, can be a vertical dimension. And he wasn't really used that way. He was predominantly deployed as a short receiver, worked a lot under 10 yards from the line of scrimmage, running shallow crossers and flat routes, often behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of pivot routes, stick routes. So a lot of people might say he didn't run an advanced route tree, which of course he didn't. But, normally I don't view that as a negative as a guy makes a transition. But I think this guy has the traits to really attack vertically. I mean, I think as you project and transition him to the league, you have to think about what he can become based on his traits. And I think this guy can really be a good receiver. I mean, to me, there's a lot there with this kid. And then that's not the way they ran their offense. Again, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't know, but I like Mason Taylor and he blocked in their run game. He's just a natural, easy mover, so there's more to come with this kid. And Adam, I imagine from what people you've spoken to, I would bet he's considered a top 50 kind of guy.
He is. It's interesting because if you look at his yards per catch, 10.1, that might be a turnoff, but you got to go study the tape. And
yeah.
Greg is saying the tape is really good. There's a lot there for him as a multi-dimensional tight end. I mean, because the tape is really good. Jeff, as we send it back to you. So this is a fascinating tight end class. It's deeper than usual. Tight end class is generally not very deep. But this is a guy absolutely projects to start. Don't worry about the numbers. The tape's really good as well.
And the tape's good. I mean, it's just certain. I mean, there were plays where he ran the seam, and it's not as if there were no plays at all. But you watch this guy move, and he's just really an easy mover. And I just think there's a lot more there.
Yeah, and you would imagine a year ago. I mean, he's third fiddle by far behind Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So I mean, it's not like they got to feature him.
They always have receivers at LSU.
Anyway, I was gonna say that's their offense. It always has been.
Yeah,
downfield, throw it to their wide receivers. Yeah. All right, let's go over to Oregon, Greg. I'm really interested in this guy, Terrance Ferguson, one of the Ducks.
Yeah, he's another guy that didn't catch a lot of long passes this year. He's not quite Arroyo and Taylor in the way he moves. But I kind of felt when I finished watching him that he could develop into a tight end one. Now, I think you'd want to scheme him in space as a receiver. He's a little linear as an athlete, so you want to get him the ball in the move. I think he can block, probably more of a movement angle leverage blocker. And I thought his blocking improved as the season progressed. Watched a lot of him blocking because Jordan James is a back who I really like. So I watched a lot of him as well and saw Ferguson block. I tell you who I thought of. Again, another example where I thought of a guy when I was watching Ferguson. It just kind of popped into my head. Tyler Higbee, the way he's deployed in the Rams offense. Mm-hmm. And Higbee was a 4th-round pick in 2016, and he was predominantly a split receiver in Western Kentucky's offense. So, Ferguson, I think that he can develop into that as he plays in the league, because he's not super big. He was 247. He's over 6'5", but he's not necessarily like a big, bulky, wow, look at this guy. This guy's just a blocker. And I think he can become, depending on your team, like Tyler Higbee, obviously, when you say he's a tight end one for the Rams, but he's not a tight end one in that he's going to catch 90 balls. So now, again, you get into that discussion that we always have with receivers and tight ends, team and scheme. But I think he can become that.
Mm. All right. The next guy is the polarizing player because he put up massive, ridiculous numbers last season at Bowling Green. 117 for 1555, which is crazy. But as you always got to go through the numbers and go what they actually mean. Greg, that's Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green.
Yeah, obviously put up huge numbers. He's 6'3" and a quarter, 241. Didn't run great, given what I think a lot of people thought. I think he's a guy that you want to get the ball to him in space. He's got, I would say, his play speed is better than his time speed. He's got really good hands and ball tracking skills. He's very straight line and linear. I think his run after catch was good when he had space. His run after catch, I think people focus on that, but a lot of it occurred because he caught the ball and there was no one in front of him. So I don't view that as great run after catch. I mean, if there's no one in front of you, where else are you going to run? I mean,
Right.
It's like when people say about defensive backs, well, they're around the ball. Where else did you expect them to be? I don't think he's a tight end one. I think you got to deploy him in specific ways to minimize the fact that he's got a really tight lower half. He's very stiff as a linear mover, but he's got great hands. He can run a little bit, so he's got 3-level ability. That's going to get him snaps. The guy that came to my mind when I watched him, and don't forget, you got to factor in the 241. He's not big. He's not big at all. The guy that came to mind is now the Eagles tight end, Kylan Granson, when he came out of SMU in 2021, the athletic testing measurables and the weight, very similar. Fannin's a little taller, but Granson was a 4th-round pick. He's basically a receiver, but he's, a lower level receiver. That's the way I saw Fannin. I think that there's some concerns with him, just the way he moves. So I didn't see him as a tight end one, despite the production in college.
And we all know that nobody will have more and better intel on Fannin than Nick Sirianni, as his new quarterbacks coach, Scott Loeffler, was the head coach at
Bowling.
So,
and I'm sure look, the guy caught 117 balls for him.
Yeah.
He's not going to say I'm not saying he's no good. I'm just, again, why do we do this exercise? I think it's important for people to remember, why do we do this, what we do? It's for putting guys in the NFL.
Right.
That's what we're doing. I mean, I spoke to one coach and he said point blank, he said, I don't know what to do with this guy. I mean, which again, that's one coach. There's a lot of coaches in the NFL.
Right.
So he certainly, can catch the ball. Like I said, there are positive traits, but at 241, and he blocked. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say he never blocked. But he's still 241.
Right.
Hey,
right,
by the way,
go
ahead. I was just going to say,
go to the next one.
Okay, well, the one guy I do want to mention, only because his dad played the NFL as a receiver, Ronnie Gatson. You might remember his dad.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
OG's the 2, right? Or Ronnie Gatson out of Syracuse, who's got great length. I mean, he's got great length for the position. Do you remember his tape?
Gatson Jr.? I did a Ronnie. I did him last summer, too. I did him when he was a wide receiver. And then
because he's long, man.
Yeah.
Really tall.
Yeah, he's 6'4" and 5/8. He's 243. He's another guy that's really a receiver.
Okay.
More than anything. His testing measurables were pretty good. I mean, and he's got tremendous wingspan. I mean, his athletic profile is that of a receiving tight end. The high percentage of his routes and targets in 2024 came from detached alignments, predominantly in the slot, but also significant snaps outside, including being the single receiver on the backside of trips, which raises the question, and it's an important question, as to whether he can be a boundary X tight end. I think different teams will see that differently. Can he win one-on-one matchups versus safeties and corners? I think that will go a long way in determining both his draft status and what he is in the league. He's long, he's smooth, he's got really good hands. He can contort his body, really good body control. He's not explosive. He's kind of one speedish, but that size, length, and wingspan and those vice grip hands do make him a weapon. don't see him as a tight end one, but he's going to play in the league. And again, depending on team, I think he can be a factor in the pass game.
All right, Greg, Gunnar Helm, Texas is the last one that we have for you. What can you tell us about Gunnar?
Yeah, Gunnar Helm is a guy that I kept going back and forth on what I thought he could be in the league. There were times I thought he could be a tight end one. There were other times I thought of him more as like a Noah Gray. But there were other times I thought of him like Jake Ferguson, who's for the Cowboys would be considered when healthy their tight end one. This guy is he's got really good hands, probably as good as any tight end in this draft class. It was difficult to get a feel for him as a route runner, given how he was deployed within the structure of the Texas passing game. Ton of free releases, a lot of routes into open space. So, you watch that, and that's great for Texas, and Steve Sarkisian's really good at getting guys into space. But, you would have loved to have seen a lot more of him running routes where he had to beat people. Where he really stood out on tape, though, was his transition from receiver to run after catch. Kind of deceptively athletic, shifty, competitive. I think he's got to get stronger. Another guy, he's only 241. So, you're dealing with a guy that is – I finally kind of felt like he was more of a tight end two to start his career. Could he be a tight end one? You think of a Noah Gray. I mentioned his name. Keep in mind, Noah Gray played 50% of the Chiefs' offensive snaps in 2024. So, depending on team, as a tight end two, you still get a ton of snaps. But he was a guy I kept going back and forth on. Like I said, I even thought of Jake Ferguson. And Jake Ferguson, he's theoretically and practically, when healthy, a tight end one. You don't put him in the top 5 in the league, but he's a tight end one for the Dallas Cowboys.
Right. Great stuff. All right. As we always do, Greg, are there any bromance guys that you have that you haven't mentioned that really caught your eye in the evaluation process?
Let me look at the list because there's so many. As you guys know, I've been watching so many guys that my brain is a little mushy.
Why you do that? I mean, I'm just glad we talk about Gatson the second because it's a former receiver. He only played tight end for 2 years, but there's clearly something there with him. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens with him there.
Well, that Syracuse offense really took people by surprise this year with McCord having a nice year and Gatson, their running backs all right. Go ahead, Greg.
I would say there's one intriguing guy, and again, when I say that, we're not talking about a high draft pick. The kid from Texas Tech, Jalen Conyers.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
6'3", 263. And I think that the question is, I think there can be more to his game as a receiver with growth, development, maturity, maybe a loss of a little weight. He's 263. He's a little short. He's 6'3". You'd like your tight ends to be taller. A little straight line linear, but he lined up everywhere in the formation. He even had snaps at Wildcat quarterback. He played quarterback his freshman and sophomore seasons in high school. I think he has to become a leaner athlete to maximize his traits. But this is a guy that the run after catch juice is pretty impressive. He's just a physical guy when you watch him. So I don't know. Could he be, given the quarterback experience and given the way he moved around the formation, could he be a Taysom Hill kind of player? I don't know. Wow. Maybe. I don't know. But he was kind of, just like a fun guy.
Gotcha. All right, great. That is the tight end class. We've wrapped up the tight ends and look forward to doing the next position with you soon, Greg. So for Greg Cosell and Adam Kaplan, I'm Jeff Mosher. Thanks for watching. You have been watching The Intel with Greg Cosell.